right, this is week 5, part 1. We're going to continue on with our journey in WPF. What we're going to do today is expand upon our knowledge of some of the little quirks of WPF. So last time around we learned about just the basics, just trying to drag some items onto the screen, create some simple windows, and have some event handling going on, and so on. And so now we're going to learn a few things that will just sort of fine-tune our WPF applications. And we're going to start with 2 exercises for today. So the first exercise I'm going to start with is exercise 1, which is create a WPF to handle click events or handle events. The app will have a slider that will be between 0 and 100 and a button that says click me. Upon clicking the button, the slider will decrease. Add another button that says touch me, and whereupon the slider will increase after the user mouses over that second button. Once we're done that portion, we're going to add another label that says not loaded. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have the text change after the window loads. So we're going to look at window loading events. We're going to add another label that says not in focus, and that text will change upon the window coming into focus. So moving the mouse in, clicking on an item inside that window will change focus and bring focus back to the screen. We're going to fire that event. Then we're looking at another label that says not key pressed or no key pressed, where the text will change when the user presses any key. All right, so we're going to do some keyword handling events. We're going to another label that says mouse position not available, and it'll change its text when the mouse moves around the window. So we'll get the XY location of the mouse. And then finally, we're going to have another label that says mouse clicked equals not available, and when the text will change when either the mouse left or right clicks on that window. So we have a lot of things to do for this exercise, so let's get started. So we're going to create another WPF console application. I'm going to call it W5P1 exercise 1, and I'll give it a home. Make sure that place solution and project in the same directory is checked. Hit create. All right, let's bring this over. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus mostly, I do a lot less dragging and dropping today and do more Zamel coding for you today. So what I want to do is, because I don't want to have the windows above and below, I find that it's actually easier, especially with smaller screens, even though I have a large screen here, to have the windows side by side, well, not really side by side, but just have them as a different tab. So I'm going to click on that button to pop out the window with the Zamel code window and just drag it and place it there. So now I have my Zamel code and I have my Zamel GUI sort of side by side there. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to use a stack panel for today. So first thing I need to do is I'm going to keep my grid and I'm going to declare a stack panel. All right, and have that closing stack panel. I'm going to start by declaring my slider. So I could drag and drop the slider. You're more than welcome to do so. Remember that stack panels will stack one above the other by default in a vertical formation. If you want to have a horizontal formation, you have to say orientation equals horizontal, which we'll get to later. We'll start with just adding a slider. I'm going to say name. We'll just keep the name equal to slider. And we'll say maximum value, we'll say is 100. We'll say minimum value is equal to 0. We'll start with an initial value of 50, so value equals 50. And that should be sufficient. So what we'll do, put a slash just to close that off. Now I want to have the 2 buttons that will affect this slider be side by side. So I'm going to introduce another stack panel. say orientation equals horizontal, and there is, oops, hate when it does it on the new line. All right, and we'll declare two buttons. So we're going to use something called a repeat button. And the repeat button differs slightly from a regular button in that it allows you, as the name implies, to repeat the action. It actually gives you more control over event handling, because we're going to do something a little bit funny today with the event handling of this button. So as opposed to a conventional button, we're just going to declare a repeat button. And I'm going to go ahead and declare manually the click event handlers. We'll say click equals, we'll say slider left click, content equals click me, and I'll say height. We'll just declare a height and width. So say height is 23. Give it a margin of 10, so there's a little bit of gap there, and a width of 70, and give it a tooltip. We haven't talked about tooltips at all, but tooltips are nice. Obviously, when you mouse over something, it gives you a little bit of a tip there on what to do. We'll say click to move slider left, right, and that'll be good enough for that repeat button. We'll declare one more repeat button. Say repeat button. We'll say click. We'll call this one slider right click. And we'll say this time, so this is the whole reason for having a repeat button in the first place. The style of event that we're going to have, so we'll say click mode equals hover. So this is where we can actually control the style of event. Instead of just a conventional click, we're going to have a mouse over event happen on this repeat button, and it'll happen repeatedly. So let's keep going. We'll say content equals, we'll say touch me. All right, and we'll also specify width and height being the same. So height is 23, width, I'll say margin 10, and just for consistency, and then do width of 70. All right, and we'll do a tooltip saying hover to move slider right. All right. And so we got our closing stack panel, and that'll be good enough for now. What we need to do now is declare the two event handlers that we have. So I will just do a Control S, sorry, to save, and we'll move over to the CS file. All right, it's got our little C# file there, and let's go ahead and declare our two event handlers, slider left click and slider right click. Now I know of course usually I'm a big proponent of just double clicking and letting it auto generate. We'll just type it out. So we'll say private void slider left click. Be careful of your spelling, case sensitive of course. Because we are manually clicking it, it's a higher chance of having an error. So your spelling should match what you have declared in the Zaml file. Our arguments are object is sender and routed event args called E, and it will be a simple, we're going to decrement the slider, so slider.value minus equals 1. Do the same for the second event handler, so we'll say private void slider right click object sender routed event args E. All right, we'll say slider.value plus equals 1. All right, so we have enough here to run. So let's give it a run and see what happens. And build errors. So let's see what's going on here. Of course, slider right click. So this is what I was expecting, is that you made you probably have the same error if you didn't type things right. Slider right click. Let's go back to my Zaml code and we'll debug it. Slider right click, no underscore there, so we should fix that. This is why we always double click as opposed to typing it manually. That's the error. So let's try again. Okay, and let's bring it over here. So if I hit click me, it decreases. If I mouse over, there it is increasing. All right, so those are some simple event handlers to get started. We've already done button event handlers, but so we thought we'd modify it a bit this time around, just so you can see for a repeat button and also how to do a mouse over event in this regard. So that's the first part of the exercise. Now let's move on to a load event. So I will take advantage of being able to double click on the for the event handler here. So what we'll do is first add in a label that we're going to update upon the window loading. So we're going to say label. We'll say x name equals, we'll call it LBL focused. Sorry, LBL loaded. And say content is, we'll say not loaded. Slash there, and you can see what it looks like in our Zaml window, our GUI window, or WYSIWYG window, I guess is what you want to call it. So there you go. We have a label called not loaded, and you can see when you click on it, it's called LBL loaded. Now what we want to do is we want to add an event upon window loading. Now window specific events are available through the properties window when you click on the lightning bolt, but this lightning bolt is with respect to the label. So we're going to click on main window itself. So just to be sure, even though it says type window, just to be sure, I'm going to expand the document outline. Yep, window is highlighted. So yes, I have the right object in play. And what I want is a window load event, or just load. There it is, loaded actually. Double click on the text box next to loaded. I click away and try again. There it is. Right, we got the window loaded event. And what we'll do now is populate that label by saying LBL loaded dot content is equal to, we'll say window has finished loading. All right, and put a semicolon in. Now let's just have a quick peek at the window again. So we have our window here. We have a label that says not loaded. Let's just run it and see what happens to that particular label. Okay, it's got that typical error. Again, just to recap, if you ever get an error like this, create app host task failed unexpectedly, it's just your computer is not caught up for some reason. So we'll just hit no and hit run again, or build and run again. Okay, it looks like my computer is really slow. Hit save. There we go. And you'll see window has finished loading. All right, so now we're able to have the window have a window load event. So what's useful about this window load event, even though I just did something silly like update a label, you can use it to initialize any data you want in the window. Think of this as sort of a constructor. When you have your constructor here, main window, just another added to the constructor where you could have window loaded. So upon the window finishing rendering and the windows appearing on the screen, you want to have some stuff happen, like I don't know, access a database or something, or download some information from a JSON or XML file. You can do that. All right, let's look at the next one, which is about focus. So I'll type that in. So we're gonna add a new label. We'll say X name. We'll call it LBL focused. Say content is not in focus. All right, so we got that. Now let's add we're gonna add two event handlers this time around for in focus and out of focus. All right, and what we'll do is we will use the GUI to generate it. I don't want to deal with any errors again. So we got our not in focus label. Make sure that main window is in highlight, and I can see type window. I can just verify, and I can see window loaded is there. So I think it's safe to double click and generate. So there's lost focus. So I'll start with that. Let's double click on that. There's window lost focus. But I also want to generate still type window, so that's good. I want to generate got focus as well. There it is. Double click on got focus. So window got focus. I got two event handlers. And I'm going to update the label accordingly. So I'll say LBL focused dot content is equal to window has lost focus. And then the opposite will happen. So in this one, so we'll say LBL focused dot content equals window has gained focus. All right, let's give it a shot. So let's drag it over. All right, so I dragged it over, but it's still not in focus. All right, click anywhere in the open space, nothing. If I click on the button, all of a sudden it says window has gained focus. So let's move on to the next one, which is mouse position. So now let's go back and add a new label again to deal with mouse position. So we'll add a new label. Guess autocomplete wasn't my friend there. There we go, X. Name, we'll say LBL mouse pose. Say content is mouse position NA for not available. All right. Now what we need to do is bring in a mouse move event. All right. So what we're going to do is go back to our GUI and make sure the window is clicked. See the window's in focus there. Let's see if we can find it here. A mouse move event. We have a few mouse events. There's mouse move right there. So let's double click on that and bring that in. So that window mouse move. All right. So with mouse move, what we're going to do is retrieve the XY location. All right. We have E there, which is of type mouse event args in this method. So we'll retrieve the position by using a point object. So point pnt equals E dot get position for this. All right. Now we'll feed that position in by saying LBL mouse position or pose dot content is equal to, and we'll say mouse position space there, and then say plus pnt.toString. All right, now let's run it. Okay, and you can see when I move it, there's a lot of decimal spaces, so maybe a better way would be using %fs and limit the number of decimal spaces, even just convert them to ints, just so we don't have to worry about the decimal spaces there. But you can see there, if you look very carefully, there are XY, right? Like this case, it's 217, 133, right? 229 by 142, right? So you can see the mouse position changes. All right, let's do a left and right click. So we're going to bring in 2 more mouse events, but we're also going to add another label here. So we'll say label, let's say x name is equal to LBL mouse click. Oops. There. Say content is, we'll say mouse click NA. All right, now we need a couple of events for this mouse in the window. So I'm going to switch back to my Zaml WYSIWYG view. Make sure that window is in focus. We see our new label there, and we're looking for mouse right. There, actually, a mouse. Well, there's mouse left button up. Okay, so we need this. I was looking for mouse right, but actually, which is right here. But so we need the button up for each of those. So I'm gonna double click on that. It's generated a mouse left button up. Go back and just generate the other one. Just get it out of the way, and there's mouse right button up. I need that too. All right, so I got mouse right button up, mouse left button up. Okay, let's start with the left since it's above. We'll just say lb mouse click dot content is equal to, we'll say mouse clicked left. Then we'll do the same again. We'll say lb mouse click dot content is equal to mouse clicked right. Okay, so there we have the 2 mouse click events in play. Now let's run it again, see what happens. All right, so we got mouse click NA, we got our mouse moving around. If I left click, there's mouse click left, right click, mouse click right. So you can see left and right clicking. All right, now the last thing we'll do is the keyboard event. I want to do that before, but I jumped ahead to mouse, so now we're going to come back to the keyboard and we're going to have a key event happen here. So one last event, I'm going to go back to my GUI and I'm going to click on the window itself up here, and the event I am looking for keyboard events is key up. Key down is the opposite of it. I'll just choose key up. So I'm going to double click on key up. So there is window key up. I want to show which key was pressed. So I need to add a label first. I'm going to jump over to main window Zaml. One final label. Let's say label. Say X name. Call it LB key press. We'll say content. I will say key press N-A, plural, or past tense, that is. All right, and that should not be a semicolon, of course. Wrong language. There we go. That's our label. That's our final label there. Now, let's go into our C#, and let's update that label by saying lb key pressed dot content is equal to, say, key pressed, and then give a space, go plus, and so we have key event args is the argument called e, so we'll just say e dot key. That's it. That'll tell us which key was pressed. Okay, so now one final run for this exercise. All right, so we have our mouse left and right clicking. Now let's press some keys. So like F, D, S. How about Shift K? Just K there. How about Control? Oh, actually shows you left Control, left Shift, right Control. Alt is System. That's interesting. Both alts. Function is also System. Spacebar. Interesting. Spacebar. Some of the numbers. Actually, interesting. You see the letter D in front of. It's like D4, D5, D2. I don't have a side keyboard. I have just a standard regular keyboard. So there you see if I hit escape, hit the tilde, that's called OEM3. Hit backspace, that's back, right? OEM5. So some of these keys are named kind of funny. Let's hit home. Home, okay. End. Insert. All right. So you're seeing that we now can handle key presses, but some of them may not come out as nice. So here's interesting. I just hit, this is page up. This is a page down. Page down is known as next, which is kind of funny there. Anyway, so this is exercise 1. Feel free to play around with this. There are a lot of little things going on in this exercise, but now you can actually take this and apply this to other areas. So now that you know that these events exist, now you can apply them to a more realistic application. So now let's move on to exercise 2. So exercise 2 is create a WPF with 2 rectangles. The left rectangle on the left will be filled with light green and the one on the right will be with light blue. We're going to create a context menu, which is actually a right-click menu. So you know how to use right-click menus in Windows, but you haven't learned how to create one. We talked about creating a menu last week or last class, and the top level menu. What you didn't learn was how to make a right-click type menu, and so we're going to learn how to do that right now. And we're going to attach it to our window, and we'll have menu item that says quit. So we're actually going to have 3 right clicks. This is the first one. So it'll be kind of tricky to keep track of, but it's important that you keep track of it. Okay, so we're going to be able to right click and have a quit event happen. All right, then we're going to create a second context menu, but attach it to the light blue rectangle. And in that, we're going to offer options to change that color to from light blue to light green to red to yellow. Right, so you're going to choose the color that it'll change to. We're going to create one final context menu, attach it to the light green rectangle, and offer options for brown, azure, and purple, and change that color to the color chosen. But we're going to take a little step further. We're going to learn how to use something called window resources and also application resources. So we're going to let our colors be defined as a Windows resource and just pull in the resource. And this is useful for actually doing a number of different things. We're going to start with just window colors. We're going to dig deeper into part 2, week 5, part 2, this whole concept of resources to specify length and width and stuff like that. We're going to start with colors for now and right-click menus. So what we're going to do is create a new project. So Control Shift N. I'm going to do a WPF app.NET Core again. I'm going to call it 5P1 exercise 2. Give it a home. and make sure place solution in and project in the same directory is there. Hit create. All right, so there's our new project. Now I'm going to pop this out, have it side by side. There we go. Just much easier to work with in that regard. So let's start by dragging a couple of windows over. All right, I'm going to use the GUI approach, and I'm going to go to my toolbox, look for a rectangle. Just going to drag one over, make it a good size. All right, and drag over one more. Draw it there so we can line it up in size. Not perfect. We'll talk about how we can make things perfect in code in the next class. So for now, we have our two rectangles. Now I'm not going to specify their colors just yet. I can actually fill their colors manually. Right? I could look under brush and well, it just made it black. I'm going to do a Control Z. I didn't want to do that, but yeah, you could click on solid color brush right where my mouse is. It'll fill it, and I want to do this in code on purpose. So I'm going to switch over to the Zaml code. So I have my two rectangles. Good enough. It's generated some rectangles inside a grid. And what I want to do is I want to define 4 colors, and I'm going to focus on using these 4 colors in my rectangle. So in order to define window resources, what you do is expand upon window, just below window and just above the grid. I'm going to define window.resources. And within window.resources, you go ahead and define whatever resources you want. Now, the colors that I'm going to use here are called solid color brush. So I'm going to say solid. Need my opening tag, solid color brush. There we go. Give it a name. So I'll say X key is equal to, I'm going to call this BR res. So brush resource. I'm going to call it light green. And its color will actually be light green. All right, let's do 3 more colors. So we'll say solid color brush. X key will be BR res light blue. We'll say color equals light blue. All right, solid color brush, X key, and we'll call this BR res just red, and color, as you can guess, is red. I like how it auto completes because conventional HTML and Visual Studio is just not as friendly. Even ASP.NET is not this friendly, so you got to give it to Microsoft. They've really improved their IntelliSense here. Final color, we'll say BR res yellow. And of course, you guessed it, color is yellow. All right, so we got our 4 resources there. Now, for our rectangles, we didn't give each rectangle a name. So let's start with just saying X name equals, so this will be rect left. And then the second one will be X name equals rect right. Now you'll notice I neglected to put this into a stack view and all those things. I just want to focus on one thing right now. So we have our names, and furthermore, what we're going to do is add a color to this. I'm going to do it in code, and I'm just going to actually, it kind of runs off the screen, so let's break this up into separate lines. There we go. Now I can actually see. There, we'll do that too. Now I can actually see what's going on here. So I'm actually going to take this onto a third line. And I want to take this left rectangle. I'm going to pick the green color, the light green color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say fill equals, when I want to use, so there were two, so in the lecture we talked about two types of resources, static resources and dynamic resources. And the way it works is that dynamic resources allow you to change the resource. A static resource is, once you plunk it in there, it's there. So I want to make both of these dynamic resources, just so that I can change the color on both rectangles dynamically. So I'm going to start with the left one. If I want to use a resource in general, I'll just open a curly bracket and I'll say dynamic resource. And I'm going to use BR res light green. All right, so we'll fill that one. We'll look at it in a moment and you'll see a big difference there. I'm going to go second rectangle, say fill equals, open my curly, dynamic resource. We'll say BR res light blue. There. All right, so we've filled both rectangles. Let's see what happens in our GUI, our visible GUI. And you can see the color is actually there. You got to give it to Microsoft. The IntelliSense Visual Studio 2019, they've really picked up a notch. They've really improved it here with WPF. Coming from Visual Studio 2017 and using ASP.NET, this is a lot better. All right, so we've got our windows, got a rectangle. If I run this, this is exactly what I'm going to see. Now, let's start into our context menus. But before we get the context menu, let's add a window closing event. We did this in the past already. Let's just do it again. I'm going to have that message box appear saying, are you sure you wish to quit? Yes or no. Let's add that in. So I'm going to go to I'm going to click on my window, make sure that window is in focus, hit my Thunderbolt for events. There's closing. I'm going to double click on closing. There's my window closing event. And let's bring in a message box. So we'll say var result equals message box dot show. And we'll say, are you sure? All right, the title of the box will be exiting with some dots. And I'll use a new line. We'll say the buttons will be message box button dot yes no. And finally, the icon will be message box image will be question. Okay, now we know that this event will fire no matter what, it'll close no matter what, unless we do an if result equals message box result dot no, so the no button is clicked. If it is, we'll just say e.cancel equals true, just to cancel out the exiting of the event. All right, so we have here our ability to prevent this from happening. Now, what we need to do, and if we were to run this on its own, we'll have the warning, are you sure, ... message. So since we've done this in the past, we know that it'll work already. What we want to do is we want to create a context menu that will allow us to fire this event as well. So like I was saying before, with context menus, we're going to actually have 3 context menus here. One to right-click anywhere on the window so we can actually quit. One to right-click on the rectangle on the right, the blue rectangle, to offer 3 different colors there. And then the third one will be to right-click on the rectangle on the left, the green rectangle, to offer 3 different colors there as well. So let's start with right-clicking to get this thing to quit. We just made our window closing event just to prove, hey, warning, are you sure you want to quit? I'm going to go to my Zamel code. And code in particular. Now, if I want to add a context menu to the window, there's 2 approaches. I could go to the GUI, make sure window is clicked, and go back to my properties. There's window. If I search for context, there's my good old context menu. If I hit new and I go context menu, I hit OK. Unfortunately, the downside of context menus is that you can't really find like how we created the menus last time around, being able to do it in a GUI is not it's not here. So what we need to do is switch over to Zamel code and continue on. So there's our context menu right there. I'm only going to add one menu item. All right. So we have here window context menu, closing context menu. Then I have an opening context menu. I need to change that to be this, and of course little extra characters there we're going to get rid of. We're going to manually have to enter the menu item here. So I'm going to open up a menu item. There it is right there. And I'll say x name equals, and we'll call it mnu when close. All right. We'll say header equals quit. And I want to add the event handler. All right, now let's click on this. And you see that, now one thing I've neglected to tell you the entire time, the entire course, is that I've kind of given you the false sense of idea that you have to be in the GUI mode to be able to modify the properties, but you can actually do it in XAML code as well. So if I click on, here's my menu item, there's xname mnu when close. I can see that its properties are here as well, and I can actually add them as well. And I could have actually just started typing in name and header over here. But really what I want to do, go to my lightning bolt, and there's click. All right, and I double click on click to get my click event handler going, and there it is. All I'm going to do is say this.close. That's it. So now let's run this thing and verify that it can right click and actually close. Let's right click. There's quit. Click. Oh, are you sure? No. Right. Let's right click. Click quit. Click yes. Yep. We want to close. Okay, so that's our first context menu. Now let's create our second context menu for that blue rectangle. Now looking at the XAML code for a moment, we create a context menu for the window. Right? I'm highlighting window here, window.context menu. I want to have a context menu for the rectangle. To do that, I'm going to move, and I'm going to go to the second rectangle and do this. So we have here rectangle. All right. We did a slash to close it off. I need to modify that. I'm going to change this from being a slash to a closing rectangle. There we go. I need to have this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a context menu. So I'll click on rectangle. Actually, I'll do it in properties. So let's switch back to my wrench there. Search for a context menu. So there's context menu. Hit new. I'm going to click on context menu. Hit OK. Let it generate it for me. There's the code that I need. All right. And what I'm going to do is change this context menu from a slash to be the two tag approach. Throw in 4 menu items this time around. All right. So we're going to have 4 different colors for this. We're going to say menu item, and I'll say X name is, we'll say mnu right red, so right click, well, for the right rectangle. Header is red, and I'll just close it off there, and then take advantage of my properties to auto generate the event handler that I need. So there's the click event. I'm going to double click on the click event. There's my menu right red click. Now let's just generate all of the right click menu items first for the right rectangle. Okay, so we'll say menu item, X name equals menu right yellow. All right, header yellow. And I'll double click. I'll generate the double click events last, just so we're not flicking between windows here. Menu item X name equals menu right, and we'll call it blue, even though it's light blue. We'll call it blue. Say header is blue. All right, let's do the slash again, and finally one more for the right. Say menu item X name menu right green header green. All right, now we got all four menu items there. Let's start with yellow. Put my mouse there. There's menu right yellow. Click and double click on click there. We got our click event handler for yellow. I'll come back to it and we'll fill in the blanks after we did the other two. Right blue, header blue. Click anywhere on that line of code. We now have menu right blue. Double click on click there. So it's generated the right blue, the right click. Finally, one last one. There's menu right green. Just click anywhere on that line. There's the click event handler. Double click. And so now we have green. Now, what we want to do is change the color of that rectangle. We're going to do that in code. I'll start bottom, go up. So we'll say rect right dot fill equals. Now we have this in our resource already predefined. So in order to access resources, well, there's a variable called resource with a capital R. Say resources and open up a square bracket, and it was called BR res light green. Unfortunately, it doesn't autocomplete here for us. As solid color brush. All right, so that's the green. Now just above it is blue. Let's just get this all out of the way. We'll say rect right dot fill is equal to resources of BR res light blue as solid color brush. All right, scroll up a little bit. There's yellow. Say rect right dot fill equals resources BR res. This is yellow, so we'll just say yellow. I seem to remember. You can always double check by flipping back to your Zamel file. Scroll to the top where you have window.resources. Double check the spelling. As solid color brush. This is probably where a common error could occur, because if you misspell this, of course, you're actually not going to get a crash. You will get like a white box. Finally, the red one. Say rect right dot fill equals resources of BR res red as solid color brush. All right, so we have our four event handlers here for the right-click menu, and what we're going to do is have it change color every time you right-click. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Okay, give me the create an app host error. Hit run again. Okay, so drag this over. If I right click on this rectangle, there's my four colors. I'll choose green. Now it's green, yellow, red, finally blue, and red again. Now if I want to exit, I'll right click anywhere on the white space, hit quit. Are you sure? Yes. All right. Last thing to do for this exercise is do the right click for the green rectangle. However, I'm going to change it up a bit. We're going to still use resources. We're using 3 different colors, but we're going to use resources at the application level. And we're going to use something called a dictionary resource. And this is used at the application level. That way you can share it amongst multiple windows, which we're leading into in week 5 part 2 in our next class. We're going to learn it to deal with multiple windows. And so and the exercise we've done here, the colors that we just created, the windows resources that we created here, exist only in this file, right? Inside main window. If I create a new window, these won't exist over there, these colors. So it's good to have these colors at the application level. All right, so that's our next step. So the first thing to do is actually add a new file to this application. And what we're going to do is, in order to add a new file, and we're kind of leading into new files in this entire project, in this course. So first thing to do, to add a new file, we have to right click on the solution, on the project name. So not the solution name necessarily, the project name. So I'm going to right click and say add. There it is, add, and it's usually add new item, but what I'm looking for is a resource dictionary. So the beauty is that the shortcut's right there. I could say new item, I could look for it in the window that's about to pop up, but I can actually go directly to resource dictionary, hit that, and it actually already has resource dictionary highlighted. Of course, if you have multiple languages installed, like Visual C# and then VB and C++, you got to make sure that Visual C# is highlighted. You might generate the wrong language and it says Visual C# items. That's perfect. By default, it's called dictionary 1. I'm going to change that to be dictionary with brush.zaml. All right, and hit add. And so it's generating. There you go. Dictionary with brush.zaml. Here we go. I'm going to just start adding 3 colors. I'm going to do the same thing I did before when the window resources block. So I'm going to say window, sorry, not window at a reason. We're going to start with our solid color brush. So we'll say solid color brush. X key is, I'm going to call this BR res brown. And you can guess the color is brown. All right. Do another solid color brush. X key is BR res azure. Color is azure. All right. Solid color brush. X key is BR res purple. Color is purple. All right, just 3 colors. All right, good enough. 3 colors. So now what we want to do is be able to use these colors. So now, in order to use these colors, we have to actually tell the application that these colors exist. In order to tell that these colors exist, we are now going to visit the app file here. And this app, we're going to dig deeper into it later, but app.zaml, and there's actually a CS file that goes along with it. So I'll start with app.zaml.cs. You can see that you can have an application level set of code, and this will apply to all windows that you have within this project here. All right, and so it gives you an application level set of code that you can run to be able to do anything you want there at this point. But I'm going to focus on app.zaml and tell app.zaml that this file dictionary with brush exists. And you already see here application.resource is already generated. I'm just going to go within those 2 lines and say resource dictionary, and then source equals dictionary with brush.zaml. I gotta be very careful of spelling. It's not auto-completing, so that kind of gives you a bit of a warning. You want to make sure that your spelling is correct, and looks like mine is. So I think I'm happy with app.zaml. Just do Control S to save. Now what I want to do is jump back to my main window.zaml and create a context menu for the other rectangle there. All right, and so if I see here this rectangle, we have rect left here. Click on my wrench. There's context menu. I'll just hit new. So making sure that this is for rect left. You can click anywhere on the first rectangle. All right, got context menu, hit OK. And so we've generated a context menu for this rectangle, rect left. And what I want to do is I want to just change the context menu there to be an open close. All right, and just add 3 menu items. All right, so we'll say menu item x name is, we'll call it menu left brown. I will say header is brown, and we'll leave the click for after. Say menu item x name, call it menu left azure, header is azure, and one last one, menu item x name, we'll say menu left purple, say header purple. All right. Okay, so we have all of our menu items there. Now let's create our click event. So I'll start with the brown line. Go to my lightning bolt. There's click. Just double click on that. It's generated my left brown click. Now I'll click on the azure line. My lightning bolt, menu left azure click. Double click on the click. There's that left azure click event. Finally, for purple, click on the purple line anywhere there. Menu left purple click. Double click on that. And we have our event handler for that. Now, let's use the colors that we generated inside our resource dictionary. And it's a very similar process to what we did with the rectangle on the right-hand side. I'll start with purple, work my way up since it's there, it's right in front of me. I'm going to say rect left, since it's called rect left, dot fill equals. Now, I want to use resources, but it exists at the application level. So now I have to actually say something slightly different than above. So instead of just saying resources, I'm actually going to say application dot current dot resources. And now I can just open up a square bracket and say br res purple as solid color brush. Now I'll do the same for azure. I'll say rect left dot fill is equal to application dot current dot resources, and then we'll say br res azure. Remember, case sensitive, be very careful. As solid color brush. Finally, rect left dot fill equals application dot current dot resources of, we're doing brown, so we'll say br res brown as solid color brush. All right. So now I have my 3 event handlers here, all good. Now, let's run this thing. Okay, so now I'm going to right click on the green, There's my my three colors there. There's brown. Well, looks like a red. I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing this color very well. Right click on Azure. All right, now it is a very light blue. I can see it. Hopefully you can see it too. Purple. Okay, purple never let us down. All right, so at least we have that. So, all right, poor choice of colors. That is a brown. It kind of looks reddish to me. I don't know. Anyway, but you can see the colors are changing. So at this point, we've done a lot of little things in a larger exercise here. So we've covered context menus, so right click menus. We've covered how to change the colors in how to set colors in resources and how to set colors in dictionary resources. And so now you can move on to week 5, part 2, start with the lecture and understand a little bit more about WPF in that regard, and then move on to the exercises for week 5, part 2.